Hey everybody, Coach Hughes here from the Be Best You podcast. I'm super excited, a little bit nervous to be honest with you. It's kind of weird, but also honored to have on guest Will Guidara. Will is an author of a book behind me called Unreasonable Hospitality. In the link at the end, you'll get to read a lot about Will's history. I strongly suggest you do learn more about him, but I really want to get into the conversation. Also, I have on Mookie Golden. Mookie is, Mookie and I work together in the same industry. He's a restaurateur. He's an entrepreneur. He's an incredible up and coming leader. And how I brought Mookie on, and Will, you're hearing this for the first time, but I had found your book a couple of years ago. Mookie and I connected for a little session I was helping him out with his leadership team. He was like, "Coach, did you read this book?" And I said, I did, but it was a while ago. And then I re-listened to it as I drove down to Virginia from New Jersey. And it blew my mind because I listened to it from a different perspective. And the funny story was when I originally reached out to your team, you were nice enough to say you were busy and it didn't have the time. And I got on the phone with Mookie and I said, you know what? We're going to be unreasonable.
Exact
And
words.
I put a box together and I threw a bunch of swag in there and I highlighted some paragraphs. And Marin, if I'm connecting it right, wonderful,
Yeah.
awesome. And she kind of said, you know what? Nicely done. We'll give you some time. And
You turned Marin into an ambassador, and then Marin,
yeah, man, she's been
Marin's
great.
ultimately the one that decides what happens around
Oh,
here.
that's
and,
good.
and
Okay.
you got her on your team. So
Well, and I think that's kind of part of it. It's one, we'll probably talk about the title is kind of, not confusing, but I think there an explanation is needed to kind of really what unreasonable means. But yeah, I want to, Mookie, if you have anything, if you want to kind of speak to Will a little bit about how you found the book or how the book has really helped you with the organization.
I'll definitely tell that story, but first I gotta run it back to the question I asked you, Will, before we were on cameras. How damn busy are you, man? This book just took off, and it's amazing what you're doing.
Thank you so much, man. I'm busy. I'm busy right now, and but good busy.
Yeah,
I think that. Listen, there's different seasons I think we all find ourselves in. And it's not the amount you're working, but the extent to which the work you're doing either depletes you or energizes you that dictates how you feel at the end of the day. And I'm loving getting to spread this message, not just to fine dining restaurants, but then everyone in the restaurant industry, and then everyone in so many other industries. And in doing so, finding myself in conversations like this with like-minded people who are similarly passionate about bestowing unbelievable graciousness upon others, and then collectively inspiring one another to go a little bit deeper and push a little bit harder and be even more creative as we pursue people. And I think that collective pursuit of relationships, of human beings, of graciousness is more important now than seemingly it has been in a very long time. And so I also have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. And so you throw that in the mix. And yeah, there's definitely nights when I'm exhausted at the end of the night, but I'm having the time of my life.
I love that, man. I love that. I have
Mookie, you have little ones as well, so all too well.
2-year-old and a 5-month-old. I just woke up, and you may hear her yell at me here in a second, but I text my wife like, please get Vivi out of here. So just a quick kind of backdrop. I'm a wrestler, always similar story as you. Was started in the restaurant industry, 12, 13 years old, and busboy, and just I've always loved customer service. I love restaurants. The first restaurant I worked in, I spilled water all over my first client, and they were like, "Okay," I was shaking, nervous, and from that day forward, I just ran with it. But not to get too deep into my history. Hopefully, one day we could catch up offline, and I'll kind of give you my inspirational story. But wrestled in college, got linked in with a great brand post college, and kind of took the ball and ran with it. Now I find myself with, 220 employees, and love the front line, love running a restaurant, and now it's turning a restaurant into a bigger business, right?
Yeah.
And so your book, it allowed me, well, take it back one step. I asked Coach to come to our leadership meeting. I had all of our guys read Unreasonable Hospitality at the end of last year, and it really re-energized me because I was able to have a tangible way to explain what being reasonable was. I didn't even know those two words were what I was doing, and now I have a way to explain it. So it was a book that, and a lot of people I know in this industry have also read this book. It's kind of like a playbook. You gave us a playbook. We say, you're already doing this, but now this is how you do it. And if we give you this book, you step into our organization, this is what we want to see. And we don't want you to do it the way that Will did it at EMP. We want you to do it the way that we want to do it within our organization. But
Yes,
you got to have that heart. It has to be in your soul, So I invited Coach.
man, that's so cool.
Yeah. We had about 50 copies of your book. I signed every single one of them for every single person. My leadership wrote a note in it. And Coach is like, we got to get Will on a call. So that's,
No, like what for people like you, what I hope the book does is just put some intention to your intuition, or give you some language that helps articulate all the things you already embody, such that you can compel those around you to embody those things as well. And if that's what it's doing for you, man, that's really cool.
Well, and he said something, and again, I love having Mookie on because the notes I had was I wrote roadmap. And it's funny, I watched a couple stuff on you, and I think they said maybe a little OCD. Is that fair to say? Maybe. Well, maybe. I'm the opposite.
Yes.
ADD, and I think for me, I wrote down a couple notes. Chapter 7 and 17 were my favorite, but what I loved was it is, to Mookie's point, a playbook, and you build on one thing. It's not just this. Can't just do this. It's the sum of all these things. And what I really like about it, and what I recommend people why they should read it, is because it's a roadmap, it's a playbook, it's sequential steps that will keep you moving in the direction of success. And you did a great job at the titles of every chapter really let you know what step you're at or what direction you're going in. So I love the fact that Mookie used, playbook, being an athletes like we are. I wrote roadmap. So nicely done.
I'd call it sheet music. I was never as much of an athlete as I was a musician. So
yeah. No, you're right.
The score.
Yeah, I connected on a lot of levels. So I started playing the trumpet when I was 7, Will, and I actually still play. I'm not very good anymore because I just don't have my chops like I used to. Coach may not do that. But I was always the musician that was also the athlete, and I kind of like merged the two together, which was
cool,
growing up. But I love what you said about bringing attention, and I think that's one question. Sorry, I got my.
No,
never apologize for a crying child.
You guys know how it is. I guess not even really a question, just a conversation starter is, I feel as though I'm a visionary, right? And sometimes it's hard for me to put those things onto paper. And I've always thought, hey, I need to put everything I know, everything I've learned on paper because I need to get a book, right? Actually, our group, we just wrote a small book that I'm giving to Coach in a few months here, just kind of a starter. But how hard was it to bring that intention to actually getting it on paper and you have such a long history, right? Just being able to develop that, did you keep journals prior to writing the book?
Yeah, so I've always journaled a lot.
Okay.
My dad made me start journaling when I was a kid, and he made me start journaling for a bunch of different reasons. He would always tell me perspective has an expiration date. he knew I was pretty ambitious. He was ambitious for me. And he was pretty confident that if I decided I wanted to, I would own my own company one day and I would lead a bunch of people. And he knew that the only way I'd be a great leader then is the extent to which I could later in life be empathetic to all the people I was leading. And it's funny how, okay, when you're a busboy, you see the world through the eyes of a busboy, but gosh, you're not a busboy for a year or so, it's much, much harder to still see the world through the eyes of a busboy. And so he would have me journal to capture my perspective in the various roles along the way, such that later in life I could reread those pages and tap back into it. He would also have me journal because he would always say, keep your eyes peeled. That inspiration is everywhere, but if you don't grab onto it and hold onto it, you lose it. And so if you just sit down with a journal at the end of the night and say, you know, I got on the subway today. Well, here's a good one. Someone sent me this thing on Instagram yesterday about this ad that Coors Light did, where I forget the name, a Japanese baseball player, one of the best baseball players, hit the ball and it hit the digital ad on the back wall of the field and broke it. The ball was hit so hard it actually broke it. So there's this big Coors Light ad with this one black square. Coors Light, someone in marketing just took that and ran with it and made it an entire, do you know what I'm talking about? They made it an entire campaign where this guy wasn't even sponsored by them, but just by using that image, they made a whole bunch of Coors Light cans where there was a black square in the can and made it this giant promotion. Okay, so someone can send you something like that on Instagram. You can look at it, you can be inspired by it, and then you lose it.
Yeah.
But they sent it to me 3 days ago. That night when I was writing in my journal, I was just writing about the brilliance of that campaign and how they saw, well, effectively a dose of adversity and turned it into a mind-blowingly creative campaign. But so journaling also capture inspiration, hold on to perspective, capture inspiration. And when you journal, you're basically creating a practice of reflection. Everyone, even the most enlightened leaders, they make mistakes throughout the course of the day. And if you don't have a practice where you reflect on the day, you don't have the ability to go in and apologize for those mistakes the next day. And it would be at the end of a service when I'm writing about that night, and I'm like, I was a dick to Mookie. And I need to go and apologize to him tomorrow. Not for the message I was delivering, but for the way in which I delivered it. So I have a ton of journals and I use those, and then I'll, Coach, I know you're about to say something. I'll land the plane here and then stop talking for a sec. But
no, please.
The best advice I got when I was writing the book was from Simon Sinek. Simon is the writer of Start With Why and The Infinite Game. He's a good friend of mine. He's the publisher of this book. He's like, hey, just go buy a giant stack of note cards and carry them around with you always for the next 4 months. And anytime there's a story or a lesson or an idea that comes into your mind for the book, just write it down. Not like, just shorthand to remind you of what it was. And then when you're in like 4 months, clear out a room, take the note cards, put them all on the ground and start organizing them. And then at the end of the day, you have an outline. And most times, like with anything, you've seen those movies where someone sits down in front of the computer and they're an author and like they write 3 lines, they delete it. They write 3 lines, they delete it. Starting can be the hardest thing. A book, a new idea, a new business. And sometimes you just need to figure out a hack to trick yourself into making more progress than you thought you were making. Because once you've started, well, the rest of it starts to feel actually much easier than people would think.
Yeah.
I think there's 3 things. Well, one is, through the book, you speak about your father, and I had a father. My father has since passed. He was a big influence on mine. I've had, basically 2 bosses that were big influence. I know Mookie's had a lot of positive role models in his life. a lot of the people that, are in our industry or in the world today don't have that. So I know that, one is how important it is to have a positive role model. But if you don't, um, what's the best advice to not use that as an excuse? The second one was this idea of thinking outside the box, which throughout your entire book, you speak about all these different situations. So just on Tuesday, I did the 9 dot thing. And, it's hard to find good people, or, and everybody has a reason why they can't do something. And what I learned over my career was one reason I stayed on was I never told my boss I don't know, or I did. And then I learned that the more people said I don't know, they weren't around. So I said, I don't say I don't know, I say I'll find out.
Hmm.
And I did the 9 dot one where you have to think outside the box, which there's 15 stories of you thinking outside the box through your, your restaurant career. And then the last part was just came in, and James Clear with his his book Atomic Habits. But there's a guy, John Giagante, who wrote a book called With Intention, and he writes about how James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits, almost lost his publishing because he procrastinated. And
That's so funny.
and here it is that here it is. He ends up writing maybe one of the more popular books out there today on how to accomplish a goal. And
I mean, Atomic Habits is a beast. Once you actually write a book and you start paying attention to how many different books sell,
yeah,
there's Atomic Habits and there's all the other books.
There's everyone else.
No, seriously, like in terms of sales in the leadership space,
yeah.
Atomic Habits is like an order of magnitude bigger than any other book on the market.
Yeah.
It's wild.
I didn't know that.
Mookie's book's going to surpass that, right, bud?
Well, if we just listen, I'm glad you're recording this. Will just gave us the whole pathway of how to do it. It's just like anything else. It's like starting a business. You got to jump 2 feet in and find a good mentor to help you, not make the same mistakes that they made. I love that you're friends with Simon Sinek, because I had all my guys read the Infinite Game. That was like one of the first books that I had my organization, my leadership read. And we kind of, I'm not like, hey, we need to read this book every year. But if I read something and I'm super inspired by it, I'm like, hey, are you guys inspired by this? And they read, and then we all talk about it. And they were like, let's get it for everyone,
Yeah.
And
Dude, that's so cool. I love that you're doing that.
Yeah.
I love that you're doing that.
Finding that.
Well, and I think part of it too is Will, is like, again, having a father like you did, having my father. Mookie's had coaches through his life that saw his potential, and I talk about nudging and nudging, right? Or nudging and nagging, and there's a fine line between the two. But by Mookie, there's a lot of young people today don't like to read, maybe because they have dyslexia, or it's boring or whatever. But what he does with his organization is, doesn't make it a requirement, but I've been learning that it's this idea of working harder, not working smarter, not harder. My problem is, how do you get smarter when you don't know where to go? And I think back to the mentoring piece. You had a dad that gave you advice to do this or that, and you sought out, other people to give for advice, ask questions. I don't think a lot of people really take that initiative to step outside their comfort zone and ask for help, or say, you know what, I want to learn something. They just stay inside this box and confine themselves.
I think it's something sad actually about some of the younger generation right now, and it's why great leadership is more important than ever. Is some people are either uncomfortable pursuing mentorship, other people just don't think they need it. Like I've talked to, like, I was talking to a 22-year-old woman who is at like a transition. She thought she knew what she wanted to do with her career. She's like 2 years into it. It's clear that she doesn't want to do that. And so she asked me for advice, and I was like, hey, one thing that I've done with a lot of people in the past that's really worked for people is create 2 lists. What are you great at? What do you think your superpowers are? What do you think, like, It is about you, that you're better than other people at these things. That's one list. Now on the other list, what do you love to do? And then create a Venn diagram. What's in the overlap there? And I'm like laying the whole thing out, and she goes, "Yeah, I just don't agree with that." I'm like, "Okay." I'm like, "All right, well, A, what are you asking? What conversation are we having then? But B,
Yeah.
you're 22. I'm literally twice as old as you. Be open to learning from people that have been alive a little bit longer." And by the way, that doesn't mean you always have to agree with everyone. I have a rule in a brainstorm with my company that you are not allowed to say no to an idea in the first couple hours. No matter how ridiculous the idea is. I could be like, "Mookie, dude, I want to give everybody a Toyota Prius with every sandwich they buy." Like, obviously that's an absurd idea, but you're not allowed to say no for the first couple hours. We need to be like,
That's a
"Okay, okay, can you tell me a little bit more? Like, can you explain this one to me? Like, where is this coming from?"
I'm writing that one down.
and I do think that there are too many people that either just think they know better and therefore are not getting the guidance that every single person, regardless of how good, how talented, how smart they are, actually needs to be the best version of themselves.
Yeah.
Because the people that are actually that talented, gosh, if they're not receiving input, they could go off and change the world. But if they're not receiving input, they won't.
A huge point. I feel like listening to you, Will, and listening to you talk about your dad was like when you look up at him, he's just an image in the sky and he's just glowing, you know? Like how and where do you think your dad got his inspiration and his insight and his knowledge and the ability to, he worked, I was just listening to the book on the way down here with my wife, working 15-hour days, coming home, taking care of your mom, having to be so intentional every day and still giving the mentorship and guidance to you as a young man in that time period of your life. Where do you think he got that from?
Man, it is such a good question. I think about that a lot now that I'm a dad. No, but it's true. Like, you obviously you want to try to figure out, like, okay, what did he do to be that good? Because I want to be that good for my kids. I think it's just who he is. I mean, listen, he was in the military. He was an athlete, right? He suffered enough adversity in his life with my mom and other stuff that I think he recognized how precious life is earlier than perhaps some others would.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he's incredible. And to this day, we were just talking about mentorship.
Yeah.
He and I were talking the other day, and he said, "Hey, Will, you're never too young to be a mentor, and you're never too old to have one." And I was like, "Yeah, where the fuck was that when I was writing the book, Dad?" And I like go write it down real quick. I'm like, where are these things coming from? And by the way, like, that is profound.
Yeah, no. Wow.
It's profound. But here's the thing. My dad is very intentional, and certain people are more intentional than others. Anyone who's ever worked for me has heard me use the word intention and unreasonable a million times. I just think being intentional is a game changer. I think we all have a lot of good stuff to give in us, and whether it gets consistently and thoughtfully shared with the people we care about is simply a matter of intention.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
It's whether, like, you decide to be a mentor, and if you decide to be a mentor, you need to make sure that you are articulating your non-negotiables well enough that you can then turn around and pass them forward.
So Mookie, you want to share, and I'll let Mookie speak to it, because you just said, and Mookie knows our founder for Jersey Mike's, Peter Cancro, is probably the most intentional person I know. There's nothing he does that's just not for a reason. And his reason, and you speak about this in your book as well, isn't because he gives the why behind it. He's courageous enough to say, well, but then also listen to feedback and stuff. But Mookie was saying, as right before we had gotten on, that he had just created his three, am I right? Did you call them non-negotiables?
Yeah, our
Right,
three
so
non-negotiables. Yeah, yeah. So our company, all right, backtrack. When I was a manager within the organization, our owner had core values for our company, and he gave us our core values. And it was, hey, these are the core values of our company. And so when I created my company, I waited about 3 years to create our company core values because I wanted to see who our company was. And I had my leadership. We just did like spitball words all over the board, and we're like, this is who we are. And we created 6 core values. We call them the Sacred Six. And I looked back at our organization and I said, well, what are the things that you have to be part of our company? So we did like a 3 hour long meeting recently, and we created our 3 non-negotiables. It was like, if you can't do these 3 things, yeah, you can have core value number 1, number 2, you might be missing 3, but if you don't have these 3 things, you can't be part of our organization. And now I'm really challenging our guys. I'm like, well, does that guy got non-negotiable number 2 or no?
Wait, what are they? What are they?
yeah.
So the first one is be profitable, because if we aren't profitable, we can't give opportunity. The second one is consistently training, and it's our commitment to being not just having knowledge of the business, but being unreasonable with our employees first, our customers next. That's number 2. It's if we didn't read this book, unreasonable wouldn't have been a word within it. And there's like a paragraph under each one. So profitability, consistently training, and what training is to us is that like heart and soul on the front line, taking care of the customer. But again, that starts with our employees. So an example of that, one of our employees started with us 7 or 8 months ago. She is by far one of the best managers in our organization. And we can't tell her how great of a job she's been doing for the last 8 months. So my director of ops said, hey, I want to be unreasonable with, her name is Toya. I want to be unreasonable with Toya. She's just, anytime I ask her to do something, she does it. Coach got a chance to meet her. She's a silent killer. Like, she's not very loud. She's not Mookie. So I said, what does she need? What because not everyone wants money. Not everyone, some people just want time, right? She just wanted a weekend away without her kids. Like, just give me a weekend. So we sent her away. Where do you want to go? Williamsburg. So we sent her there for 3 nights or two.
Dude.
Just those kind of things. So that's pillar number 2, right?
I love that, man. I love that.
And so number 3 is store and staff presentability, right? Like, you have to be presentable in order to be unreasonable in our eyes. And so I'll send these to Coach. I'll send them over to you. But with that being said, the one thing I've connected with so well, and I think you do this so well because you went through the trenches and you worked in every level of the restaurant. You know what every person goes through. I can go in and open the store. I'll go in and close the store. I'll go do the manager's duties. I can run your store I can run multiple stores for however long I need to. And I will do it if you need me to, right?
Yeah.
And guys, they feel that, So teaching them how to be unreasonable for their staff is really, it's like on another level. How do we train that mindset? And it's something that I know can be taught because I learned it as a college athlete. I was very talented. My best friend, who I'm here with today, I always say she taught me how to be a champion because she trained when no one else was training, and it just changed. You can change your mindset even if you don't have the physical ability. So yeah, I mean, I could obviously go off on a tangent.
Dude, I love that, man.
My cheeks hurt right now, smiling. But
I want to read this mini book, by the way. You got to send one to me too.
All right, I will.
And you know what it is Mookie has always, and again, I've known Mookie since he was a young man and a manager, and had an opportunity to see him grow and prosper. And he was given an opportunity. He's giving other people an opportunity. But I think to your point is he's always been unreasonable. He probably didn't know that that's what he was. And then the hard part is when that's who you are and you want everybody else to be that. It's hard to get people to see that through that lens, and I do think that and I'm hoping you're hearing is this is just one franchisee that has used your book, and you can see what it's done for his organization. I hand out about 6 of these every one of my classes. We have multiple other franchisees in our organization that use them. I handed out to, gosh, so many people outside the restaurant industry. I love your story about some of your biggest clients that you speak to is funeral homes.
Yeah.
And it's not about the restaurant industry, but I can just, and I won't because I want Mookie to talk more, but in you is, I just want you to know, I know that your book has sold a lot. I know there's a lot of attention, got the bear, you got that influence there. There's a lot of publicity, but there's the other, and I know you love stories, and I love your little things you get about hospitality, but I can tell you 10 different companies or people that have used your book as that roadmap or that playbook to really anchor their company. So, you need to know
Dude,
that
thank you.
had a huge
Thank
impact.
you.
Yeah.
It's really, really cool. I mean, that's everything, right? I think like, listen, we're all trying to make whatever impact we can in the little and in the big ways. And in my restaurant, the impact I was trying to make was on the people that worked with me so that we could collectively impact the people we were serving. And I think at the end of the day, that needs to be a part of everybody's why, is how are we impacting other people? Because I don't care what you do for a living, you have the capacity to positively impact people around you. You just need to figure out who those people are and reframe your perspective such that you're not squandering the opportunity in front of you.
Yeah.
But how I think there's this idea that as a leader, you're always helping other people become better versions of themselves at the expense of yourself. This idea that if I take time to work on me, that's being selfish. When, as new dads, as young kids, that whole analogy that you can't be there for your kid if you're not around. So as I think my maybe last question, I'll let Mookie kind of add some more in there, but what have you done as to be the best version of yourself so you can be there for your team, for your company, for your customer, now for your wife, now for your children? What's some advice you would give somebody to one, be okay with working on yourself and becoming the best version of yourself and not trying to be what everybody else thinks you should be? What are some things that you've done through your life or career, or some advice you would give somebody that would be listening to
Yeah, I
this?
mean, the advice I would give is this. Okay, I don't think there's anyone who's still listening to this podcast clearly is trying to be a good leader, right? Otherwise, they'd be listening to a different podcast. So if you're trying to be a good leader, you listen to this podcast. There's no world in which you disagree with the following statement. We should, as leaders, be encouraging our people to take care of themselves outside of work and invest in their own personal growth and balance such that they can be the best versions of themselves inside of work. I think that's I think we can all agree on that these days. That wasn't the case 20 years ago, but in this time and age, I think every good leader would agree with that. And yet, so many leaders don't do it themselves because they think the best way for them to be a good leader is to invest all of themselves into the people that they're leading and none of it into themselves. That makes you a bad leader. If that is your instinct, you are wrong for a couple different reasons. One, if you're not investing in yourself, you are not going to be the best version of yourself when you are at work. And two, people follow the example that is set for themselves. If you tell everyone to fill your gas tank, put your own oxygen mask on first, like have balance, do the right thing for you, but then you're not doing it, people won't feel comfortable doing it themselves. They'll think they're lazy because you are ultimately setting the example. Words are powerful, but words without the actions to back them up are not powerful. Okay, so that's the advice. If you think you're a better leader by working harder, you're wrong. You are actually doing yourself and your entire team a disservice on multiple levels. What have I done for myself? How have I followed it? I mean, okay, inconsistently. And I think that's an important thing to acknowledge. Like, no one's perfect. Everything I wrote about in that book, that is the leader I am aspiring to be every single day. And if anyone reads that book and they're like, wow, Will just gets it right all the time. No, I do not get it right all the time. And I'm saying that not to be self-deprecating, but to make sure that anyone who is not getting it right all the time, just so that they understand that, yeah, that's normal.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you're failing. It means you are actually succeeding at being a normal person, aspiring to be great. But I just think what we do to invest in ourselves is a very different and uniquely personal thing, right? And so, like, what works for me is not going to work for someone else. When I was running the company and on the floor every single night, and in London and in LA and New York, what I needed was time alone in front of the TV with Chinese food. Like, I think I read about that in the book. That was my
Yeah.
oxygen. Like, I want to order shitty Chinese food. I want to watch shitty television. I want to turn my brain off and just like be alone. Now,
Red wine.
what's that?
And a glass of red wine.
And a glass of red wine. Good memory. Now it's different because now I'm not in a dining room every single night, right? I sold my company. My life is different now. I spend a lot of time in front of the computer or on planes. So now my oxygen is actually the opposite. I want to be with my closest friends. Maybe still eating Chinese food and drinking red wine, but like I need something different now in order to keep my cup runnething over than I did before. And once again, it just requires intention to know what it is you need and then be systemized in ensuring that you receive it.
Well, I'll replay that back, and there's 5 or 6 awesome quotes in there. So thank you for that answer. And one of the things that struck, and I will pass it to Mookie. I apologize, Mook, but
oh, you're good, man.
it said I had a conversation the other day, and Mookie knows me, and I'm in front of a lot of people, and a lot of people are getting inspiration from what I do. And I told them, I said, I'm probably one of the most insecure people you're going to meet. But one of the things that you spoke about too is forgiving yourself or being okay with not having to be perfect all the time. And that's human, right? I mean, that's what we're supposed to be. It's okay. To at least when you're putting the effort in, if it doesn't work out and you fail, doesn't mean you're a failure. It means you're getting better. So thank you for that. That was a perfect answer, to be honest with you.
And not only is it okay, I think it's essential. People will only follow someone if A, they trust that person, and B, they can see enough of themselves in that person. If you pretend to be perfect, no one will trust you because we're not perfect. And so everyone will know you're just basically BSing them. Let's say you actually convince them that you are perfect. Let's say you pull a fast one on them and they're like, wow, he is perfect. Well, now they're still not going to follow you because they can no longer see themselves in you. Vulnerability, it's like kind of a little bit trite as a word now, but it's overused for a reason. It works.
Right.
I think probably the challenge that this whole room has is when you identify that in someone, and you could do it on a small scale, 5 to 10 people, but when you're on a scale of 200 to 1,000 people, it's just there's not enough time. So you have to have leadership within your organization that can then identify someone who's unreasonable and start to mentor those individuals. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I heard this from you, Coach. The 3 people you should have in your life. Will made me think of this about the mentorship and mentee. So I don't know where I heard this, but I'm going to take credit for it. This is
if it's good. If it's good, I'm going to take credit for it.
This. So you should have 3 people in your life, and think of it. This was you, right? With the
no,
rope?
No, but I know you can get.
So you have 2 ropes, one from your stomach to your mentor, one from your back to your mentee, and one from your hip to your peer. You should be walking through life with your peer. Your mentor should be pulling you, and you should be pulling a mentee. And I tell our guys that often, because if I'm mentoring you, it's not about the knowledge that you're getting. It's about the knowledge that you're giving. Right. So it's very similar to what
I love that, man. That's cool. That's very cool.
And then when you're walking,
also, my dad would always say the best way to learn is to teach. And so if you actually want to be a good mentee, start being a mentor at the same time.
Yeah.
I wish I said that, but I can't take credit for that one.
I forget where it was.
That was good. That was good, man.
In a room. You were in the room. And
I'm gonna pass that forward and be like, guys, I can't remember who came up with this, whether it was Mookie or Coach, but it was one of the 2 of them.
After you say it the second time, you own it. You know that. You give credit the first time, then you own it the second time. Will said, in 2011, and I just thought of it again.
I don't know how long you have. I mean, we would love to keep you on all day. I know that you have a tight schedule. But
I have a hard stop at the half hour, so we still have a few minutes here.
So I know Mookie had done some questions from his book and stuff. So Mookie, if you want to give you a couple of things that you want to ask him, and I have one more question for myself as well. But
honestly, Will has given me so much information. During these kind of conversations, it's not even like you learn something. It's just like the inspiration that and being able to be intentional. And that's really, I believe, what the book has taught us.
You take a young man like Mookie, all the different things that are challenged about, entrepreneurs today. And he's an inspiration to me. If you want to see somebody work for everything he's earned, but do it humbly and the right way, he's one of those guys who's done it with integrity, with intention, and I know he's gonna go on to do amazing things beyond just being part of our company. So I was just glad to have him on, because one, I think for you to see the diversity in who's reading your book, what they're getting out of it, and then how they're taking that knowledge and your stories, and putting them into action on the ground. It's pretty cool. So
dude, I'm so happy that it worked out that way. And Mookie, it's such a pleasure to meet you, and Coach, it's so good to spend time with you too, man. This has been really fun.
Yeah, awesome. We'll get you some subs or something, or if you're down in Virginia,
some gift cards,
Yeah.
Give me the gift cards to work at the airport, and I'm all in, man. That's great.
Yeah. So I will share at the end of the and then any written stuff out there where people can get your book, certainly your websites. I'm actually getting my hip replaced September 11th, which I was really hoping to go to your conference.
The Welcome Conference.
The Welcome Conference. I think Mookie, had you been to that one?
I haven't. No.
Did it sell out yet? Did the Welcome Conference sell out?
And it sold out in like 20 seconds this year, which was so we got to make it bigger somehow. Because it seats about 1,700 people, but something. I just think there's a real desire for people like us to feel in community with other people like us right now, and that's what I'm trying to build.
If they can't get to again, because it did sell out, like you said, is there a way for people to learn about maybe next year, or
content? I mean, if you go to unreasonablehospitality.com, that's kind of like the gateway to everything. That's where people can sign up for my newsletter that I put out every 2 weeks called Pre-Meal. That's where there's stuff about Welcome. We put out all the videos from Welcome a few weeks after the conference, so everyone can watch the talks from that day. That's where we talk about all of our training workshops. All the different stuff we do is kind of through there. So if anyone's feeling curious, just go there and kind of journey around a little bit.
Yeah, and if you're looking for any input or contribution from our perspective, or you ever want to reach out, and that's something we do as well. Mookie's been able to sit on a few leadership panels himself. So
I'm waiting. I'm just going to be waiting to see this book now, Mookie.
Yeah, me too.
The one we created, one of our leaders, his name is Evan. He always says we give the whys, right? For everything we do, there's a reason why, which I also connected with in your book. And so our company's name is Sub Valley, and we got all the whys of why we do everything in our restaurants. And the book is called Sub Valley Whys, WISE, and it's like scratched out, and it's WHY. So for our organization, and just I am just the person that gave the opportunity. Our guys really put this thing together. It was really cool. And so now I'm editing it and going through it, and it's just it's inspired me to really put something together.
Yeah.
Dude, I can't wait to see it. I mean it. Send me a copy. You guys have my address. So.
I'll make sure we get a copy over to you.
My first book's going to be a coloring book.
Yeah. Just I just want it to be 50 pages.
Okay.
Of you, and I can just color in your face and just exactly what I'm saying with the eyebrows and the mustache.
Yeah,
and the whole thing.
Tone the eyebrows down if you will. That yeah. Well, Will, I honestly, it was it's always exciting to again, it's weird in my world, in my little world I live in. I'm kind of like not a celebrity, but everybody wants to take pictures, and it's an awkward thing. But for me, and I think I speak for Mookie, it's an honor to meet someone like yourself who's you're out there, and a lot of people are talking about you, Jimmy Fallon and the Bear and all this kind of stuff. And but we appreciate you being your humility and taking the time to just chat with us. And I hope people can enjoy the conversation and grab definitely one or two nuggets out of it. Then it's more than worth it. So I want to thank you personally.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. I said in the beginning, there's stuff that you do that energizes you and stuff that depletes you. My time with the two of you has energized me, and I appreciate you for that.
We appreciate that.
Mookie, enjoy your vacation. Coach, good luck with your surgery. And guys, I look forward to our paths crossing again soon.
All right, we'll be getting you a little care package here, and we'll throw some in for Marion as well. And hope to meet at some point in our paths cross. So
I look forward to it, guys.
Thanks, Will.
Take care. See you guys.
You best you.